My name is Jonathan Hargreaves, and today's TRN Taster will be about basic probability. Probability is the likelihood of an event happening. Probability is both random and unpredictable. How is it used in society? Well, it's used to assess risk. Let's have a look at how we insure our car. The car insurer will always assess about how we behave, where we live, our driving history. For younger people, black boxes are offered in order for the insurer to see how we drive. They look at our no claims bonus, they look at journeys, they look at mileage, they look at how we behave, and therefore they try to predict the probability of you and I being involved in an accident or a car being stolen. Let's have a look at how we can use what's called a probability line. A probability line is a horizontal line. It moves from 0 to 1. The measurement of probability is always measured as 1. On this line we can write 0 to 1, and at 0 we can write impossible. The probability of something happening is impossible. This is then followed by unlikely, then evens, then likely, and finally certain. The probability of something happening is certain. Probability is measured, as I said, from 0 to 1. It can also be measured as a fraction and as a percentage. So if we look at our probability line again, we can have 0.0 to 0.25 to 0.5 to 0.75 to 1.0. And as a percentage, we can also write 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. So how do we measure probability? Well, there is an equation. So let's have a look at that equation. Probability equals, on our top line, the number of favourable outcomes. And on our bottom line, it's the total outcomes or possibilities. In order to demonstrate this, we need to look at examples. So the most obvious one, always used to demonstrate probability, is the toss of a coin. It's always used before a football or rugby match in terms of which team is going to face which side. And the referee usually has a coin, shows it to the players. One of the players chooses heads or tails, and the referee proceeds to flick the coin in the air to land on the back of his hand, and we look at the outcome. Someone wins. So let's have a look at our equation. The number of favourable outcomes will only be, in this case, 1, because it can only be heads or tails. The number of total outcomes or possibilities are 2, because we have heads or tails. So we write our equation as 1 over 2. If we look at our probability line, we can show that as 0.5 or 50%. And therefore, we can see that the likelihood, the probability of us choosing the correct side of the coin is 50%. The more we use something in a trial such as this, the more probable that our prediction will be correct. We could flick that coin a dozen and more times, and it can always land on heads or tails. But the probability is that the more times that we do it, it will demonstrate that the likelihood, the probability of our chosen side of the coin will be correct. Let's have a look at throwing a dice, and using our equation, we can see that the total number of favourable outcomes is 1. Dice will only show up as one side. So if we try to throw a 6, the number of favourable outcomes will be 1. There are 6 sides to a dice, so the total number of outcomes or possibilities is 6. So we write our probability as 1 over 6, or 0.0167 as a fraction, or 16.7%. Once again, let's refer back to our probability line, and if we can see, we can place that 16.7 on our probability line. The probability of us being able to throw a 6 will be unlikely. It will be less than unlikely. One further example and a slightly different demonstration of probability. We have a bag of marbles. We have 16 marbles in our bag, and we want to try and predict the probability of choosing a certain colour, because our marbles are all divided into 3 colours and 3 different numbers. So we have 4 yellow, we have 7 blue and 5 green marbles. So how do we measure that? Using our equation. So for yellow, the total number of favourable outcomes is 4. We have 4 yellow marbles. The total number of outcomes, possibilities, are 16. We have 16 marbles. So we show probability of choosing a yellow marble as 4 over 16, or 0.25 as a fraction, or 25%. Let's have a look at blue. Blue is the number of favourable outcomes is 7. We know we have 7 blue marbles. So our probability is shown as 7 over 16. As a fraction, it's 0.4375 or 43.75%. Finally, green. We know we have 5 green marbles, so the number of favourable outcomes we write as 5 over 16 because we have 16 marbles. Or we can write that as a fraction, 0.3125 or 31.25%. Now the interesting thing is, if we add our fractions and or our percentages, we arrive at the figure 1, which is what we should do for the overall figure. And if we refer back to our probability line, we have the figure 1, which is what we should do. I hope that's explained basic probability. I hope you've enjoyed today's TRN Taster, and I hope to see you all soon. Thanks for listening.